afraid that was gonna happen. He's throttled too, son. God, thank you.
I can't believe this.
All right, welcome back to this week's Marsh Fit Outdoors podcast, powered by Final Draw TV. And I tell you what, season 8 has just aired on the Sportsman channel for Final Draw, and they are batting. I mean, just they're hitting home runs. Lindsay in the first episode killed a giant velvet buck, followed right behind Carson, who actually killed a deer that Lindsay passed up on, I think 2 years ago, that ended up turning out to be an absolute giant. So season 8 is off and running, and we're excited about that. So go over to Sportsman channel, check that out on Sundays, Thursdays, and Fridays. I think it is. You have to look up the times, and also all their YouTube content is on their all their other content's on their YouTube channel as well. We have a lot of great episodes coming up on the podcast each week. Some really cool guests lined up. We got the Virginia Outdoor Sportsman show that's coming up the first weekend in August. So come see us at the Virginia Outdoor Sportsman show. We'll be right beside the Final Draw TV booth. We got some really great stuff going on, which I'll announce later on. But kind of piggybacking off of last week's episode with Bear Track Outfitters, the outfitter I'm going in to bear hunt with in September, Doug Boze is on, and he's got an awesome book out. He's got some really cool insight, I think, on the bear hunting aspect of things. Obviously, there's some things going on in the state of Washington with the laws on the bears, so we can definitely jump into that. But Doug, thanks for joining me tonight, man.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it. Thanks, Chad.
Yeah. So Washington State, born and raised there, or moved there?
No, born and raised. I live about 15 miles from the house I grew up in, so
Awesome.
I've been here 47 years.
That's awesome. Well, I've never visited the West Coast, but I definitely need to. Everything I see is beautiful country, totally different than I think here on the East Coast. I'm about an hour. Well, I'm probably 2 hours away from the Chesapeake Bay, so I'm getting into more of the rolling hills, headed towards the Shenandoah Valley, Appalachian Mountain chain. So kind of stuck in between both those areas, but can be at either one in pretty short driving distance. So it's pretty nice, actually.
Nice.
Yeah.
Washington's we have some poor leadership politically that has kind of had the decline of a lot of the increase of crime and everything else, and the decline of society kind of throughout Washington. But I won't get into that too much. But Washington is a really beautiful state.
Mm-hmm.
We have the coast, we have rainforest, we got deserts, alpine, volcanoes. I mean, pretty much everything but tropical forests is what we got.
Right.
Amazing.
Is that so? Is Roosevelt elk there or no?
Yeah, we have Roosevelt elk, and we have wapiti as well. So yeah.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, that's great. Well, Doug, I'm going on my bear hunt in September. I know we had talked about doing it last year, the podcast. I switched my weeks around. We actually went to Texas last year. That was our big hunt, to hunt axis deer. Had some other things lined up through the fall, so I just couldn't make all of it happen. The wife had me on a pretty good budget last year, that I definitely maxed out, which was nice. But let's kind of go into your background a little bit. Most of the stuff that I see, your content, it does obviously really revolve around the black bear, it looks like to me. A lot of the content that I see from you. So where did this passion, where did this desire, this love come from that really sparked you to get into this so wholeheartedly?
Well, so I mean, in reality, I like to hunt just about everything except for waterfowl. I just don't really have an interest in duck hunting. It's not that I've, it's just I grew up without dogs, and I'm not really a dog person, and so you kind of need dogs to hunt waterfowl. But anyway, like with bear, it was kind of happenstance. I would buy a bear tag about every year when I would go deer hunting. And then in my mid-20s, I actually got my first bear, but it was just by chance. I was deer hunting. I was walking a logging road. I saw this bear right behind me there. I saw that one eating, it was sitting on its butt, picking stuff off the ground, and I thought, what the heck's it doing? So anyway, I shot after I didn't see there was no cubs or nothing. I shot and I dropped it, and I walk up to it, and it was eating maggots off of an old cougar kill. And so it was just picking those maggots up and eating them. So it was like rolled in maggots, and that was a mess anyway. That's kind of what started like my interest in it. And so in Washington, we can't use dogs, we can't use bait. So it's only spot and stalk, predator calling, that type of stuff. And, as things kind of progressed throughout the years, I realized a lot of people had no idea how to hunt these things without dogs or bait, at least consistently.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of bear take was happenstance with elk hunters, deer hunters. Oh, there's a bear, shoot it, that type of thing.
Yeah.
But you never really targeted them. And so my passion was, hey, I want to learn more about these things. They're a cool animal. I've been out in the woods for so long and I hardly ever see them. How can I see these more often, more frequently, get better at it? And so I started reading up on the internet and through my own experience and just going out and really chasing bear. And in Washington, our bear season starts August 1st and ends November 15th. So we have a really long, liberal bear season. Whereas like with deer hunting, our modern firearm deer season, because you have to pick a weapon in this state for whatever, for deer is only like 2 weeks. And so if you just limit yourself to deer hunting, you might get 2 weekends in, maybe. Yeah. If you're a blue collar guy and you can't take time off or whatever. But like with bear, you've got several months. And so that's kind of where that started. But yeah, people think that, or I guess I'm best well known for bear hunting, but yeah, I hunt deer and elk and everything else.
Right.
I really enjoy all that stuff.
Right. Well, obviously it led to you writing a book that's on Amazon now that people can get. And I was actually going to see if I could get one. I was going to buy one before my hunt. I wanted to see if I could get you to sign it and we get sent out, but I don't know how that works ordering it through Amazon. But,
so to do that, like people just get a hold of me online. And sometimes I'll have like a stack of like 20 of them. I just keep them around the house for that purpose. They're like, hey, I want a book. And then I sign it. I think it's $30 anywhere in the lower 48, something like that, 30, 35. But anyway, yeah, that's kind of how I do it. But yeah, you can find it on Amazon. Some Cabela's carry it in stores, that type of stuff. The book. So I want people to know, like, I have a couple books on bear hunting, but the very first book I wrote was called No Bait, Just Bears. And that was self-published. That's more like an extended, almost like a report.
Mm-hmm.
Amazon has it for like $48 or something like that, because it's print per pay, and it's color. And so, you're not printing 1,000 of them at a cheaper price. Right. It's expensive. So don't get that one. Get the Ultimate Guide to Black Bear Hunting. That has all that info in the first book and more. So I just want to put that out there.
Gotcha. So obviously all of everything that you kind of started experiencing and building up on and progressing it and honing your skill and craft and really falling in love with bears, led to the writing of this book. And that was the reason, you obviously wanted to get it out to people and get information out to people about, what the possibility was. And then if you had the possibility, the opportunity, how do you capitalize on it, right?
How do I capitalize on?
No, I'm saying that's kind of how that's kind of what the book was meant for.
Yeah.
Opportunity, create an opportunity and capitalize on opportunity.
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Yeah. So, well, I want to kind of roll into one thing really quick, and then we can jump back to the bear stuff, because I think we'll have a lot of meat in that. But you were talking about predator calling for the black bears. Didn't even know you could do that for black bears. Obviously, I need to read the book. But I think, didn't you just do that with your cougar hunt?
I did. So, I got into predator calling before I got into bear hunting. And so Randy Anderson from Primo's Calling Out Coyotes, I used to buy his DVDs and watch him and Wooly and all of his buddies go coyote hunting. And that's where I got into predator calling, is just watching his videos and trying to figure out, because I like to hunt coyotes too. And I'm like, well, how do I do this successfully other than just wander around? So I watched those videos. And then there's another video by Wayne Carlton from Carlton Calls. It's called They Come to Eat. And that's all about predator calling bear. And watching that DVD, that really got me stoked. I was like, oh man, I got to try this. So the very first time I predator called for bear, I called in a bobcat and a coyote on the same set within like 15 minutes of each other. And so, yeah, like from then on, I was hooked because I'd never seen a bobcat in the wild. And
Right.
I'd rarely see, because Washington's so thick, at least where I live on the west side, you rarely see coyotes. And so it was just kind of cool to be like, wow, I just did this in like a half an hour. I just saw two animals that I normally never see. And so that really hooked me.
Yeah.
And an extension of that, we have major predator problems in Washington, cougar being one of those.
Mm-hmm.
And cougar is another example of you can't use hounds to hunt them.
Right.
So how do you hunt them? Most take on cougars is people stumbling upon them when they're elk hunting or deer hunting, whatever. So I want to teach people how to successfully call cougar in to them so they can call it in just like a bear, because that's the most efficient way, in my opinion, unless you're the guy who can hike through the snow, cut tracks, and then try to run those tracks down. That's the other, good way to do it. But
Right.
for me, it's
Yeah.
predator calling. Get those animals to come to you.
Yeah, and kind of before we get into your hunt, because I really want to break down your hunt. Do you think that, and this is kind of a loaded question, I'm just more or less really picking your brain, getting your opinion. Two things. Do you think due to the lack of availability to run hounds really obviously gives more opportunity for that population to increase? And then do you think it negatively kind of hurts your state's economy by limiting what hunters can come in and do?
I definitely think that using hounds and bait for bear is a very effective way to hunt.
Mhm.
No question. And I fully support it where it's legal. And the same with cats. Meat Eater had Giannis Putelis from Meat Eater. He did an episode on YouTube, and I think it's called Living with Cats or Living with Predators, something like that. But
Mhm.
he followed around the Washington State Department of Fish and Wildlife droid, who his job was to haze cats and get them away from populated areas and stuff like that, to kind of scare them away, get them back out in the woods,
Mhm.
so they don't have to be killed and euthanized if they're taking sheep or whatever it might be. And they got within 20 yards of one that was in this pile of brush, and the only reason they knew it was there was because it was collared. They never heard it, never saw it, but they could follow it on the GPS. And so that tells you how like stealthy those things are.
Yeah.
But they use dogs. They are allowed to use dogs. They run them up trees. And before I got into bear hunting, I was actually, back in the 90s, I was like kind of against baiting and hounds, because I didn't really get it. I didn't
Right.
hunt bear. This is kind of lazy, and it's mean. They just tree a bear and shoot it, or a cougar. I didn't realize that it's treed and freed lots of times, or it gives them ample opportunity to say, hey, that's a sow and not a boar. Let's let it go.
Right.
There was a lot to it that I didn't get, but
Yeah,
now
I
I
never
get it.
thought about that. That's a good point.
Yeah. And so yes, hunting with hounds and using bait is definitely a very good way to go. Back to the economy situation. I don't know how many people were outfitters running hounds back in the day, but I'm sure that if it came back to fruition, that would occur. And so, there's definitely economic benefits to hunting, regardless of the method.
Right.
If you're a deer hunter, use a modern firearm, you're traveling, you're going to a grocery store, getting groceries, gas, pop, whatever it might be, supplies. If you're an outfitter and you're a guide, you're still buying supplies for your client. You're still using gas to take them out. There's tons of economic benefit to hunting.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just didn't know if, I don't know how much, people really seek after these mountain lion opportunities. Obviously, they're guided hunts all over the place. So I just didn't know if that was like limiting helping control population, also, negatively affecting, which could be a benefit to your economy through hunting. But yeah, those were great answers, I think. So,
Thanks.
yeah. Real quick, let me take a sip.
Yeah, no worries.
So back to the cougar. I want to kind of break down your hunt because I was really fascinated. I mean, I obviously saw the videos you posted on Instagram, a little bit of the story. But can we break down that hunt real quick and just kind of, how did you even go about it all the way to how it ended? I think it'd be really interesting because that's something I've never done. I don't know if I'll ever get the opportunity to do it.
So there's some backstory to this. So I actually shot this cougar in the exact 50 to 75 yard chunk of land that I shot my 2009 spring bear in. So if I can turn this around, that's that guy.
Oh man. That's awesome.
And so that's an area I call Paradise. Paradise, but for
Right.
bear, so Paradise. And it's an area that I hunt, and I've hunted for several years. And I've had trail cameras out there and stuff. In the last couple of years, we've had a ton of cougar on trail cameras. The 2 years ago or last year, I had 3 or 4 different cougar attempts at deer that failed. But that was just in the view of my one camera. So you can imagine through how big of an area that is, how many attacks are really happening. And, cougar has to eat. I got nothing against it. But it was like, I had 5 or 6 cougar going down just this one creek bed, So there's plenty of cougar in the area. Fast forward to March, and I had some cameras I set up through the winter just to kind of keep an eye on things and whatnot. And I thought, well, I'm going to go pull my camera that's over by the river, but I'm going to check out Paradise and maybe just predator call and see what happens. But I was specifically going to call for cougar.
Gotcha.
And so I set up my e-caller and I plugged in my app and I started calling. I called, for about an hour, 55 minutes, something like that. And, but like with cats, you got to hold super still. And like, I'm talking statue. So I really recommend if people want to call in cats, big cats, bobcats, you can kind of get away with movement, but a little bit, but big cats, you want to just hold real still and you want to use like an electronic collar if it's legal and if you can.
Right.
Anyway, I had the setup, I guess, is there's a large stump. I sat up against that and has kind of a tree growing out of the top of it. And then to the front of me is about 40 yards of grass and then more brush. And to the left or right for 50, 70 yards is all kind of grass. But then there's brush and heavy stuff all around it. So that's kind of what the setup is. Anyway, it called for about an hour. Nothing was really happening. I thought I heard something midway through, but I wasn't sure. And I've noticed that when I've called, lots of times if I think I've heard something, but I'm not sure, that tends to be a cat. I've had bobcats come in, like it's almost like a spider sense, something's not right. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the feeling I got. Anyway, I went to get up and I'd been sitting for an hour. And so I kind of just rolled on my side and I went to push myself off the ground. I looked over to my left and there was that cat about 13 steps looking at my collar when the collar was in front of me about 30, 40 yards on top of a stump, kind of hidden.
So he was looking away from you to the collar, but between you and the call.
Just to he was like in a blind spot to my right. So if I'm facing the head, he was to my right and kind of, behind me at like, what would that be? I don't know. But yeah, to my blind spot, my right.
Right.
And yeah, so when I went to get up, he was looking at the collar, but then movement, he just kind of focused like right on me instantly. And I was kind of hunched up and I had like this burlap, not a ghillie suit, but this poncho that I wear to kind of hide my movements. And when I saw him, I know like with deer and elk, like if you make eye contact, they know something's up, so they just bolt or, they're aware. But with the cougar, and I'll do that with deer too, I looked up and I just kind of glanced right back down, pretended I didn't see him. But my gun's leaning against the stump, right? So I got to reach for my gun. So I'm just kind of hunched up and I reach for my gun. And I just kind of raise up and shoot. And I hit him and he just jumped once and then died basically. But he was close and he was probably 150, 170 pounds.
Goodness.
He was 7'6" plus from nose to tail. Just a brute, beefy cat. Yeah, he was, and I think he was probably 7 years old, maybe older. The warden thinks he's older. His teeth, he was missing teeth down below. His canines were kind of flat. They were yellowed. He had recessed gums. But yeah, it was pretty incredible.
Well, I mean, so was that your first cat, or had you killed?
That was my first. I've called in some, but that was my first. Yeah.
I don't
And
know
so
many people that would go into the woods wanting to call them. Like I mean, I guess it's just because I'm not around them enough. I'd rather just let's go our separate ways. I don't even want them close. But I mean, just listen to the story, raise the hair on my neck, because I mean, it's interesting how big of an animal that is. I mean, you think of North America. I mean, we have grizzlies, we have cougars, but we don't really have things like you would see. I feel like in Australia or Africa, right? Those types of things that can really, all the deadly snakes and stuff, they can just really just maul you and kill you. So when I think about those types of animals that, there's few that you can count on your hand that they'll fight back and they'll put a hurting on you.
Well,
it makes me nervous, thinking about it.
When I walked up to that cougar, I was like, I wouldn't have had a chance if he would have got the jump on me. It would have been brutal.
Well, that's the thing, and you didn't even know he was there. So how long was he even sitting there?
That's the beauty of it. That's what I like about it. And I've been stalked by cougar before, like
Really?
at night. Yeah, you turn around, and I think that was another 13-step situation too. And all you could see, you put your light up, and you could see his eyes, and then he would duck behind this log that had fell, and then you couldn't see him, and then he'd raise his head up, and then you could see his eyes again. And
what do you do in that situation? What do you do?
Oh, we were yelling and stuff. Me and my brother, we found a cougar kill. He had killed a calf, and I had missed that cougar earlier in the day, and then my brother missed it that evening. That's a whole nother story. He fell asleep and woke up to the cougar eating this elk in front of him at like 30 yards watching him, and he missed. and so we're looking for this cougar, and anyway, we at dusk, and we get together and we start hiking out, and then we realize that thing's chasing us, and I ended up touching one off in the dirt to scare him off, but like he wouldn't leave with us yelling at him. There's two of us, and he was real close, and there was just enough light to where, when a cat gets ready to pounce and they kind of wiggle their butt like that, he kept doing that, and that was nerve-wracking. That was
well, I mean, that instance, I mean, your fight and flight instincts kick in, right? So I mean, really, you're not going to outrun the cat. You're not going to outmaneuver the cat. So, I mean, you got to stand your ground and start really thinking about, this could turn into a life and death situation real quick.
I think me and my brother could have took it because my brother's pretty big, but and both had guns. But yeah, it was. I think they say 60 stitches a second is what you can expect from a cougar attack. And no joke, man. Like, you take those paws out and you kind of, you fold the claws out of their paws, and because they retract when they walk. So they're not dull like a bear's paw or a coyote. Those things are just like needles, just razors.
Yeah.
And
I remember the pictures you were showing. I mean, you showed the pictures. It looked like hypodermic needles coming out of it.
Oh yeah, and I was actually careful even when I was skinning it, because they have one high up on their dew claw, like up here. And man, when you're skinning, if you poke that thing out, those meat hooks will get you.
Dang. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And I don't want people to think like, hey, he's killed one cougar and he wrote a book. Like, what's he know? That's not really the point. I've trapped plenty of bobcat, because that's in the book too. It's called Calling Cougar and Caging Cats, and so I'm talking about live trapping bobcats. But I've spent a lot of time focusing on cougar and how to call them in effectively and stuff like that. So I really want people to just. I wrote that to give them kind of a leg up. You know what I mean?
Right.
Instead of spending that time.
Well,
so
I'm sure it's very valuable information for people that want to be crazy enough to go do it. I don't know, man. It's nerve-wracking to think about, because, I mean, that's a big cat. That's a big cat.
Well, if they can take down an elk, they can take down a person, no problem.
Easy. We're about an elk hindquarter.
Yeah. So
no, that's awesome, man. What a hunt. So, you getting him mounted, full body mounted?
Full body mount. Yeah, I was just gonna get like a rug, and then my dad was like, "Oh, you got to get it full body mount." And my wife, "Oh, you're only gonna get one, so you better get it full body mount." And I was like, "I'm not gonna only get one,
Right.
September's coming really quick, and I plan on going right back out.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So how does the tag system work for cougars in your state?
Over the counter.
One tag a year, or
so one tag a year generally, but they just opened up down in the Blues, which is like in the southern part of our state, southeast part of our state. There's a mountain range that kind of connects to Oregon. It's called the Blue Mountains. And going back to our predator problem, the Blue Mountains elk herd is just getting hammered by by bear and cougar, and now wolves too. The neonate ungulate retention recruitment is like basically nothing right now. So you'll have 130. They tagged 130 some odd elk calves, and like 7 of them made it to winter or something like that. Just made it through the spring to the winter. That doesn't even mean that they made it through the winter. And they just
coming up on the harshest part of the year to make it through too.
Yeah.
Right.
And 70 some odd percent of the predations are from cougar.
Right.
Like 15% is from bear, and the other is like miscellaneous, who knows what, coyote or breaks a leg. But yeah, even this, I posted a video, a little reel of that the other day. There was a Department of Fish and Wildlife guy. He tagged a elk calf that was 2 days old or something like that. The elk didn't make it 4 days.
Really?
The tag, the caller will stop will send off a beacon, once they quit moving, because that indicates like it's dead. So he went out there to retrieve it, and when he went to retrieve it, a cougar bounced right off of that thing 10 feet in front of him. So in the blues, they allow 2 tags for cougar, but each unit it's highly regulated. Each unit has a quota. So in the unit I was in, you can only get 6 cougar, let's say. And when you get one, you have to call it in within 24 to 72 hours, something like that, so they can update the quota. But they're rarely ever met. So that's part of the thing too, is because you can't use hounds or nothing like that. Those quotas aren't really reached. And so, that's
why that kind of goes back to my first question. And we're kind of getting into what I was kind of poking at, is like, if those other opportunities aren't there, you're kind of missing out on a whole area of hunter that may be interested in coming and doing those things, which in turn to me will increase a population to where it's over an abundance, and now you're seeing the effects on the elk population. So I mean, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a biologist, but to me that seems like easy math. And I just don't understand it.
Well, it is easy math. You're absolutely right. It doesn't take a scientist to figure out, hey, if a cougar kills 52 deer a year, 1 a week, or a little bit less than that, elk, about one elk every week and a half, that doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out, hey, if I take out 1 cougar, I'm saving 52 deer.
Right.
If you have 15 cougar in 10 square miles, that's a lot of deer or a lot of elk that are getting wiped out.
Right.
So yeah.
So how does the and let me know if you know this or not, but I'm interested because you just kind of touched on it. But how does the whole home range system work of a cougar? I mean, when they have their litter, I mean, do they stay with them for a while, or do they start kicking them out pretty early? And do you know anything about that? Like, obviously, if you're not hunting these animals enough to really put an impact on the population enough to keep it sustainable, they're going to start migrating and start kind of sprawling out to other areas. So that's just going to keep growing, which then causes the social situations.
They do that anyway. So, a male cougar will have a range of, say, 10 square miles or greater. And he will allow females to kind of hang out in his territory with her cubs until they get a couple of years old, then they get booted out. But Tom's male cougar, like a young Tom in an older Tom's territory, he'll kill that younger Tom if he can, to push him out, or just to kill and eat him, just to get rid of them, because they're territorial. But they allow the females to hang out with them, but that just makes sense. If that's typical of male behavior, guys, happy with the ladies hanging around, but another dude, no, you better get out of here.
Exactly. No, that makes sense. No, it's an interesting animal. I haven't dove much into the cougar mountain lion situation, and to be honest with you, I had like Brandon on, the owner of Bear Track Outfitters, last week, and he was talking about he's like, the first night, Sunday night, everybody comes into camp. Camp's full the week that I'm going up, which would be awesome, seeing and meeting other people. But he said you get a couple people that are a little egotistical, kind of come up there and they're beating their chest, paid a lot for a hunt, and Just drop me off. You don't need to take me to the stand. I'll walk the trailhead, drop me off at the trailhead and I'll walk in. And he said their mind changes really quick when they see that first cougar paw print in the mud, or they hear a pack of wolves howling. I was like, y'all got cougars? I was like, I didn't know that. So no, it's just very interesting. And I'm just interested in that animal because we just don't have them.
One thing I forgot to mention too about that cougar hunt was the brush that was all the way around me was like chest high, blowdowns, nasty stuff, ton of brush. But that thing slipped in there like it was nothing, like dead quiet. You know what I mean? Right. And for animal, bears do that too. Bears can be real quiet, but for an animal that heavy to be able to slink through there without arousing suspicion is just, it's incredible. Bears command respect. Cougars the same way. I have the utmost respect and admiration for both of those animals.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's going to kind of take me into my next segment. I'm going into my first bear hunt. I've probably seen 2 or 3 my whole life, Doug. I think I kind of heard a little bit of your post the other day. I guess something had happened out west. I'm not real sure with a black bear situation. We can go into that in a second. But, there's a sense of fear, but I think, it's more of like a respect thing, like you were saying. These animals definitely, even just as an animal, I mean, I respect deer, I respect everything, but there's a little bit difference, going into this hunt and the suspense of it, the anxiety, but the adrenaline of it. And I just haven't been amongst them, and this is going to be a really neat situation. So I think the respect thing, I mean, I'm sure you probably preach that a lot to people when you talk to people, or even in your book, right?
For sure. But when I first started hunting bear, I was nervous hunting them because lots of times I hunt alone, and I'm thinking, right. I'm going after a predator, something that can hunt you. It's different than hunting a deer. A deer, right, for the most part, is not going to attack you. Right. Same with an elk, unless it's in the rut and you're right in their face or something like that. But they're not vicious. Right. Bears can be. But as I've hunted them for years and years, I've become more and more comfortable, more and more acquainted with their body language and kind of what to expect. But I still know, like, that thing can tear me apart if it wants to. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, most of the time, black bear are they smell you, they're going to run off most of the time. But I have had them charge me. I have had them sneak in right behind me without me knowing. It's a dangerous animal.
Yeah. So yeah, and can you kind of go into the story that you were kind of talking about on Instagram the other day, kind of preaching the respect these animals type situation, and what kind of unfolded with that?
Yeah, so I brought that up because in Washington, we've had several incidents in the last couple of weeks and last couple of months actually, where bear are going more and more into suburbs, more and more into actual cities. And we had one just the other day killed a goat and went after another one in Bellevue. And Bellevue is like a city. It's not really a suburb. But anyway, what I was talking about on Instagram was there was an incident in Arizona a couple of weeks ago. A guy, and this is in rural, out in the sticks a bit, but he was sitting on his porch having a cup of coffee. He was 66, and a black bear came in and grabbed him and drug him off and ended up killing and eating part of him. And the neighbors heard him yelling for help and stuff, and they went to scare the bear off, and they tried, and it took a bit before they finally got a gun. And then they ended up shooting the bear once in the neck and then once through the heart and lungs, both of which could have been fatal, obviously. But I watched the necropsy report, so the autopsy report of the bear from the Arizona Fish and Game, and they said the bear was 366 pounds. It was a male bear between the ages of 7 and 10, completely healthy. It had a good layer of fat. It had a good belly full of food. No broken bones, no bad teeth. So nothing indicated like, hey, this thing was hurt or wounded or starving or rabid, diseased. It was a healthy bear. Right. And it attacked a healthy man. And, that my point is like, yeah, bears look cute when they're eating your bird seed or something like that. Or if you're an idiot and you start feeding them donuts or something off your porch, that's all fun and games until one of those things decides to, eat you instead.
Right,
You
right.
are prey. That's all there is to it. Um, and so, yeah, it's just kind of, and for someone to feed a bear to make him habituated to human food and garbage, you're killing that bear because it's going to become a problem bear, and it's going to end up getting euthanized, generally speaking. I've been out in Alaska by myself, and as a lower 48 guy, to me that's kind of a big deal. To Alaskans, they're like, yeah, who cares? I do that all the time. But when you're out in the
That's a
woods
big
by
deal.
yourself, you realize, like, because there's grizzlies and there's browns and stuff like that, and and wolves, and you're like, hey, I'm 100 miles from nowhere, and I'm on the food list. No
Yeah,
question about it. You know what I mean?
right.
So you might think you're without weapons, you're not on the top of the food chain. So
Yeah, well, I just think it's interesting, as a East Coast, Virginia guy, out west and Alaska and stuff, they just a little bit bigger, a little bit meaner situations out there. But you come to respect the animals, you come to enjoy. I think when I go up to Manitoba in September, I'm looking forward to the experience. I think it's going to be, and last year was my first year really going out of state. I went to Texas. My wife and I left the kids at home and went to Texas for a week and then Nashville for a week, but we got to hunt down in Texas, and just seeing different terrain and seeing how different animals interact with their terrain and ecosystems and stuff like that. It just really it's infatuating, and going to Manitoba, up to the Inner Lake region of Manitoba. I mean, you kind of have a picture of what it's going to be like from videos I might watch or this or that, but the experience I think is going to be overwhelming.
yeah, no, it'll be great, man. I'm jealous. I've wanted to go up to Canada and hunt over bait and stuff like that. I just haven't done it. But one of these years I'll get to. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it sounds like you got plenty of adventures right there at home to do.
Yeah, we do. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're right.
no, that's awesome. Well, Doug, this has been awesome. Where can everybody find your books and also any of your content and stuff like that? If you just want to put that out real quick.
You can find me on Instagram, just Boze and Bears, Boze and Bears. That's my last name. My name, Douglas Boze, on Facebook, and really that's about all the social stuff I have.
Yeah.
You can find my book on Amazon, Ultimate Guide to Black Bear Hunting, or Calling Cougars, Cajun Cats. That's the newer one. I've written, it's called The Hammerfell. It was like a teen fantasy dragon book. I've got a collection of coloring books called Shades of Adventure. All of that's on Amazon. So yeah, that's pretty much it, man. And I always tell people, hey, if you have questions, once you read the book, because that'll answer most of your questions. But once you read the book and you still have questions, feel free to hit me up on any social media or whatever, and I'm happy to help you if I can. So yeah.
Well, that's awesome, man. Well, I'm looking forward to getting one and reading through it, and I'm excited about my adventure. And obviously, I'm going to keep up with, I'll send you some pictures and stuff. I hope of my experience and let you know how things turn out.
Yeah, that's good luck, man. I'm pulling for you. Oh, and real quick too, like I should mention, the American Bear Foundation has recently opened a chapter in Washington State, myself being the president of that chapter. So if you're interested in bear hunting and giving a voice to bears and further study and stuff like that, feel free to join them at the AmericanBearFoundation.org. We're a nonprofit organization. Everything is volunteer. So yeah, that's the other plug I should do.
That's awesome, man. We actually got the Virginia chapter last year, I think it was.
Nice.
I met those guys at the Virginia Outdoor Sportsman Show, and I'm supposed to do a podcast with them soon. So awesome to see that kind of picking up and going to different states now, and I guess now they're chartering things a little bit. So it's neat seeing that spread around. But
yeah, definitely.
Well, Doug, I appreciate it. And, real quick, if you want to help us continue, if you enjoy the podcast, we continue to try to put out great content each week. Please give us a rating and also a review on any podcast platform that you listen on. Also, this will be up on YouTube. You'll be able to find that about halfway through the week. I'll upload the video on YouTube. You'll get to see some of Doug's awesome bear mounts and stuff that he just showed on the podcast here while I'm watching it. So, Yeah, and until next time, we'll see you in the woods. Appreciate it, Doug.
You bet. Thank you.